Your tarot cards are ideal tools for creativity. Inside of every single Rider-Waite-Smith-based tarot deck are 78 cards filled with stories and personalities and archetypes and scenes. So if you're a writer, using your tarot cards will unleash a goldmine of ideas, inspiration, and guidance. This video is part of the Tarot for Writers series I'm doing here on this channel. The next few videos are going to be about plotting your book, not plotting your book if you're a discovery writer, and character development, which are three great ways to use tarot for fiction writing. But today we're going to be talking about your book project, or any creative project really, but as a whole, and looking at how tarot can help you with every single stage of the creative cycle as you come up with ideas for the project and then birth it out into the world. I'm Angie Green from The Simple Tarot, and The Simple Tarot is all about helping you learn how to read tarot cards so that you can then use them as tools in your own life for personal development, self-care, having a little fun, and most importantly, for creativity. I am an artist, a writer, and a creator, and a maker of things. It's one of my personal goals to be insanely prolific, and I want to create a lifetime of useful, helpful, interesting quality work and leave that as my legacy. This means I spend a lot of time thinking about creativity and how to improve my own process and my production, and thinking about how I can help others do the same thing. So I'm going to share with you everything I've learned. And of course, we're going to use tarot and associate tarot cards with all of it. So let's first talk about the creative cycle. So what is the creative cycle and why is it important? There's no official definition of what the creative cycle is and how it works or what it entails, but there is a process that we all go through when we're creating art, producing a series of videos, or writing a book, creating anything, in fact. During the creative cycle, we collect ideas and fill our well until we get inspired. And this inspiration gathering period, it's really a time when we're sort of resting or fallow. We're in a resting phase until we identify an idea that we find interesting and want to explore. And this may be an individual idea, a type of project, or we might be combining multiple ideas into one. But when we have this idea, we're ready to move on and research and learn more about that idea, including what has been done by others, how it's worked in the past, how it could possibly work, how it's designed currently, and what potential challenges might exist when we approach the topic. Eventually, we're going to develop our own thoughts about that idea or that mashup of ideas. And we will produce a prototype based off of our own thoughts and ideas. We'll evaluate and refine that prototype based on our own goals and possibly feedback from people we trust. We will develop that prototype into a finished product, and then we're going to share our resulting work with others. I am talking about this as if it's part of a manufacturing cycle with prototypes and development and research and products, and kind of in a way, creativity sort of works that way. Now, there's more to it, obviously, when you're creative than really just manufacturing widgets, but we all go through this cycle and we do it in different ways. So whether you're a writer, you're creating a first draft during that prototype stage. When you're a painter, you're usually just sketching in your sketchbook, but both of us are creating a prototype of what the finished project is going to look like. Let's dive deep into each stage of the creative cycle and to see how our tarot cards can help us, especially as writers as we're approaching this creative cycle. When we collect our ideas and fill our well until we get this spark of inspiration, one of the most obvious ways of using tarot is right here, to brainstorm your ideas and connections. You can ask your cards questions and then have them answer. Questions like, what if? What then? What next? How about if this happens, then what if this other thing also happened? Great if you have two cards, but if you want to add a third, you can say, what if this third thing happened instead? You just play off of each card again and again, and there's no pattern or rhyme or reason to this. You can also use your cards to ask sort of what type of person would be involved in this type of experience. And this really helps you get to flesh out some character beginnings or scene ideas before you even have a story idea going. As a creative, you absolutely need to factor in time for rest, reflection, and self-care. You need this sort of pointless, directionless, daydreaming, idea gathering, inspiration time. So if you're stuck here, your tarot cards can help. So if you're struggling with this phase of the creative cycle, it's quite possible that you're suffering from burnout or facing writer's block. So check out this other video that's going to help you deal with specifically those issues. A lot of times we don't spend enough time here because we live in this like must produce, must create cycle. But this restful inspiration gathering time is a necessary part of this cycle. When we identify an idea we find interesting of these many that we're collecting, and we want to explore that, or maybe we have a couple ideas we want to mash up together, the ideas can often come from our life, from the news, from stories we hear, from other people, from books or movies or TV. But obviously they can come from your tarot experience as well. If you're creative and you're healthy and you're feeling energetic towards your creativity, meaning you're not facing burnout or anything, you're going to know that you're pretty much always collecting inspiration and ideas. So this whole creative cycle, it makes it seem like you stay in one step until you're completed and then you move on to the next step. But that's not the way it works at all. You spend a lot of time collecting ideas and inspiration pretty much constantly as a writer. It really helps sometimes to spend a lot of time in that inspiration gathering, well-filling idea stage. But you will be gathering inspiration and ideas through the entire cycle. But eventually you're going to come to a place where you need to make a choice. And how do you choose which idea to work on? Sometimes an idea grabs you and it will not let go, so you don't really have that choice. But sometimes you can make a conscious choice because you know what the market is ready for, or you know it's going to please your audience and they're asking for it, or you're creating something for someone specific and you know what they're going to like. So personally, I do not find tarot very useful in this stage of the creative process, in choosing an idea. I use tarot to explore my feelings about an idea, maybe why I want to pursue it, but the actual decision-making happens because I trust my intuition. I know what I want or where I'm going and what my values are. And I trust myself to make good choices. So I don't need tarot to help me with that. Although I really suppose tarot does help, but it helps only as a guidance, not as a decision-making tool. Once you've chosen your idea, you're ready to move on to the research stage where you learn more about that specific idea, like what the genre expects, what other writers are doing, how other people have approached this, and what sort of challenges you're going to face during this particular project. So this is another area where tarot really shines. So while much of the research is going to happen online, in person, through books, you can also use your cards to guide you, to help you and just explore what you're learning and where to turn next. All right, some people, like me, we love research, and we can often spend too much time in this stage because actually developing ideas and getting them down on paper is really hard compared to the fun of the research. So if you get stuck here in the research stage, your tarot cards can guide you and help you get out of it. They're going to tell you when it's time for you to move on. When you're writing and you're in this research stage, the project is going to guide your questions and your research topics. So there's some genres where the story doesn't need a lot of research at all, and this could be like a contemporary romance or cozy mystery. There's just not a ton of research you have to do. You'll have to do some, but not a lot. Whereas military history or maybe science fiction, like hard science fiction, you might need to do some more research in that. Just depends on the genre and the project. But there's also... You can use tarot to help you guide your research for the story level, but you can also use tarot to help you guide your development and research into how to accomplish this project. Every writer's different, and we all have a unique process, but we all like to do things in our own unique way. And research can help us see what's best practices for the craft development or for completion of the project, even in the marketing stages, which we don't really need to have to worry about yet because we don't have a project completed to market, but we can use our tarot cards to help with research in all of those areas as well. So some questions you can ask your cards are, where can I look for ideas, inspiration, and information? Who can I ask? One of my favorite questions is, if this is true, what else might be true? For me, what will be the most challenging part of this particular project or process? And this is the one I ask all of the time because I like to get stuck here, but I always ask, do I have enough info right now to get started writing this story? Am I ready to move on? And now I don't need to have 100% of the story researched and ready to move on, right? I only need maybe 30% before I'm actually ready to get started. You can, again, just like all of the other stages, you're going to come back to this research stage multiple times during the process of creation. But when you're ready to move on and you have enough information to get started writing, you're ready to develop your thoughts about the idea. Discovery writers usually jump right into a first draft at this stage. If you're more of a plotter or an outliner like I am, you might have a different process. Writers often use the practice of free writing to help them develop their ideas. So you can use this whether you're a discovery writer or whatever type of writer you are. You basically set a timer for like 5 to 15 minutes and then you start writing without self-censorship about a specific topic or about nothing. The only rule absolutely is that you just never stop writing until the timer goes off. Even if that means you have to write, "I've got nothing to write about" across the page 20 times. You do not stop your pen from going. This is where you get your ideas down. You get to blab, digress, have fun, brainstorm, relax, ramble, ignore things. You don't need to pay any attention to spelling or sentence structure or grammar. You come up with ideas, you reject ideas, you follow and chase ideas. You just wander and you question and you play with everything. Most of what you write when you're free writing is kind of unusable garbage, but at least once on every free writing session, I find something interesting that comes out of my brain that I didn't even realize was in my brain. When I'm unsure of what I think about an idea, like I don't know what story I want to tell or how I want to tell the story, or I don't know how to find the thread that's going to connect all of my ideas, my research, and my curiosity, then I use tarot to help direct my free writing in a fairly specific way. I will shuffle my deck and I will work my way through it one card at a time, card by card, asking different questions and then coming up with my idea from different angles and different sides. So some questions I'll ask to direct my free writing are, what if X were to happen? If X happens, then what if Y happens? Or what if Z happens instead? What would the readers expect to happen in the story or scene? And then what could happen instead? How could I flip this? What haven't I considered about this story yet? And I'll just go card by card by card, and I will write until my brain is empty, and then I will pick up a new card and keep writing with that new information. And I will do this until the 15 minutes is up or until my brain just is absolutely dead. But once you know your own ideas and you're ready to start like putting them down on paper, you produce a prototype based off your ideas and your thoughts. So this is where you really start the real writing process of being a writer, although I have to say the whole creative cycle is actually the real process of being a writer. But this is where you start getting real words down on the page. And whatever your process, whether you plot and plan before you write or you just sit down and you start telling the story, you've got to get something down on paper before you can move on to the next step. Tarot is a really good tool for this phase of the creative cycle. It's really good at helping coming up with inspiration and creative ideas to direct your story, especially during the outlining and drafting stage of creating your prototype. So as a prototype, for writers, it might be a full outline if you're a plotter, or it might be your first draft if you're a discovery writer. But whatever it is, it's messy, it's terrible, and it's something you never want the world to see. So the next 2 videos in this Tarot for Writers series are going to go specifically into this phase of the creative cycle. The first video covers planning and outlining with tarot if you're a plotter, and the second video covers planning and discovery writing your story with tarot if the idea of outlining gives you hives. Both of them have great ideas for this phase of the creative cycle. No matter what your unique process is, tarot is going to help you get those words on the paper, and it is a perfect tool for inspiring new and creative ideas. And it's also great for help when you're ready to evaluate and refine that prototype based on your own goals and maybe even some feedback from people you trust. This phase of the creative cycle is where things start to come together and the story becomes real. This is where you take your shitty first draft or your zero draft or that fleshed out outline and then you do something with it. So you evaluate it with a clear eye and you start taking the mud and the muck and you turn it into something that actually resembles a really good story. If you are a discovery writer, this is where you revise the story and you go through the revision process, whatever that looks like for you. You might work with a developmental editor and polish things up, and then you're going to pull it together. If you're more of a plotter, this is where you add the meat to your story. You've got your solid outline that you've probably done your developmental edits on that outline. And now this is where you just put the words down for the story. And then you're going to do whatever revision process works for you. And then when you're ready, you're going to share your new story with your team of beta readers, with a professional editor, or your first reader for feedback. Many of your decisions for the story have been made already, but if you're struggling with this phase, it can really help to do a tarot spread about the project, not about the story, but about the project and why you're struggling. So some great questions to ask your cards are, why does Act 2 feel so plodding and slow? What needs to happen here to make it exciting? Or, this part of the story isn't working. Is it a character problem, a motivation problem, a conflict problem, or something else? I'm kind of losing interest in this project already. What's missing or what's going on in my brain? Why am I losing interest in this project? Those are all great questions to ask your cards. And when you feel confident that you have something that's pretty solid as a story, you're ready to develop that prototype into a finished project or finished product. So this is the final editing stage of your writing project. And here you're not focused on the story as much as you're focused on the craft of telling it at sort of the scene and paragraph, sentence, and word level. And depending on your process, and we all have a different process, and your process is necessary and unique to you, you may find that tarot is a really fun tool to look at this project or where you were stuck with this project. So the next step after this phase is a scary one, and so many people get stuck here reworking and re-editing the same story over and over and over and over again, just because they're so afraid to move on and share their work with others. But for most of us, we write because we have a story inside of us that needs to come out and because we have a story we want to tell. So part of that telling means we need to move past this editing stage and into the sharing phase of the creative cycle. So some ways you can use your tarot cards is just to ask questions during this phase like, have I created the best story I can right now? Is it ready to be shared with the world? I am afraid to finish this story because when I think of this story, what is the energy I feel? Do you feel fatigue, stress, distraction, fear, resistance, lack of knowledge, boredom, or drudgery? You need to address those first, then come back to the story. And this is actually a good for any time in the process that you're feeling sort of negativity about the process, about your story. Usually a lot of that is either boredom because you're not telling the right story, or fear and resistance because you're not telling the trueness or you're afraid of telling the trueness of the story. There's a lot of reasons this might be. They're mostly mindset reasons, and tarot is fantastic for helping identify those mindset issues you're having anytime you're struggling with the process. Obviously, as we get further through the creative cycle, we're using our tarot cards less and less for inspiration and ideas about the actual story, and we're more working on our mindsets and beliefs and the project itself. And tarot is fantastic. It's a great tool for both. But when we're ready to share our finished product with others, this is the publishing and promoting stage of a project. And there's a lot of practical actions that take place here, but it can be emotionally exhausting. We confront so many emotions and limiting beliefs and blocks when we birth our creative babies and share them out into the world. And anytime you're facing a limiting belief, a mindset issue, or you feel emotionally exhausted, your tarot deck is your number one tool for helping you investigate what's really going on. This is less about using your tarot for the project and more about using tarot for yourself. Now, taking a look at all of this, it seems like the creative cycle is really hard and a lot of work, but if you're a writer or a creative of any sorts, you know how fun the creative cycle can actually be. And you don't really stay stuck in any one step of the cycle. It's a cycle, and like a wheel, you're constantly turning through all of them. For most of your projects, you're going to breeze through most of the steps and the phases, and it's just going to flow. This video is just for when you're stuck in any one of those phases and I really know you need to move on, and I want some clues and ideas on how to use your tarot cards to help you get past this block and into the next phase. You're going to have a unique process based on your experiences, your preferences, your strengths, your personalities, and what you write. while you're going to work your way through the same creative cycle as every other writer out there, and for every project you do, you're going to work through this cycle. The way you work through it is going to be different from every writer and from every other project you do. Every single time you create a new project, you work through this process of the creative cycle. But every time you do a new project, the way you work through the cycle is going to be different. You can use your tarot cards to help make the process and the book or creative project more interesting and more fun and more developed. And then when you get stuck, you can use your cards to help yourself get unstuck. And I have got a great tarot spread on the creative cycle itself in this next video right here. It takes everything we've covered here and puts it into actual practice. And it's a really simple 4-card spread, a short way to determine where you are in the creative cycle and where you're stuck and what you need to do next. So this video actually is about planning and prepping for a writing project, and specifically, since it's the middle of October, it's actually about planning and prepping Preptober, getting ready for NaNoWriMo this year. So if you're doing Nano this year, it's not too late to join us, and I would love to see you in that next video because you can absolutely use your tarot cards to help prep and plan both your story and your life getting ready for November. See you there.